Perhaps this is the last book of this series, MHI-01, Block 9, and here we are likely to dilate upon ancient and medieval societies, the modern world, and overview. Okay, let us start. It is a Herculean task to know about the historical demography with inadequate sources or source material. Demography means the study of population, its size, growth, and mobility. So, without proper or sufficient source material, it is certainly a difficult task to know about historical demography. Anthropology and archaeology, in this context, contribute to some understanding of the variations in population in early times. For modern period, we do not have any obstacle, but for early times or ancient period, we are constrained to depend on or draw generously from archaeology and anthropology for our study, for the purpose of understanding the historical demography of earlier time. The most important source of information about population is census. Census, you know, that counting of people in modern times it comes after every 10 years. So that was the most important source for counting the people. The first enumeration dates back to 508 BC from Rome. It were the Romans who first undertook the census in 510 BC. But this census only counted those individuals who were either fit for work or liable for taxes and made no effort to enumerate total population. But the census conducted by the Romans in 508 was limited in its scope as uh, it included only those who could fight or those who used to give taxes. So that was why we cannot say that in true sense of the term was inclusive of the common people. However, historians use these source materials to extract information about the structure of population. That's it. Information historians require to know about the structure of a population. That is on the basis of age, sex, marital status, etc. Genealogies, chronology, chronicles, witness lists, archaeological investigation of burial grounds, appearance of new sites, and extension of land under cultivation provide useful supplementary information about general trends of population change. Whether it is ancient period or a modern period, there always a population change, and that can be gleaned in case of earlier times from genealogies or chronicles written at those time, witness list, archaeological investigation of burial grounds to investigate burial grounds. So through archaeology also is of immense help in this respect, and appearance of new sites and extension of land. under cultivation. So these things give give us some idea to know about the structure of population, or you can say the population change at a particular point of time. In England, court rules provide detailed information about manorial levies such as marriage fee, death, duties, fines for sexual misconduct, and exemption from residing on the manor. In case of England, the court rules. Court rules means something written during the court session. They give us information about manorial levies. Levies means taxes. So manorial system, which was prevalent during the feudal period, the manorial levies might like marriage fee. People, those who used to live in the manor, they used to give a marriage fee, death duties, fines for sexual misconduct if they violated the sexual norms or rules prescribed by the society. They were liable to give fines and exemption from residing on the manor. And certain people were there who were exempted from giving taxes in manor. So the court rules in England provide these informations to us. By linking these differences, historians have attempted to reconstruct the English manorial population. So, on the basis of the information provided by court rules, historians have been able to reconstruct English manorial population. That's nothing, no ready um, document is available there. So, taking all these things into consideration, the students have been able to reconstruct. We have to reconstruct only manorial, English manorial population on the basis of the evidence we discussed just now. So Europe holds a special position in the historical study of demographic change with the help of the Paris registers and the records provided by the church about baptism, marriage, and burial. So we get certain more information about the sources to reconstruct the society or the population change in Europe during the period, like Paris registers and the records provided by the church. Church used to maintain certain records. So, on the basis of that records, we glean information to reconstruct about the marriage and burial. The Cambridge Group for the History of Population and Social Structure has produced many significant works on population. There are other sources like the Cambridge Group for the History of Population and Social Structure. We can also glean information or evidence or source material for the study of population from the Cambridge Group for the History of Population and Social Structure. We are discussing about the source materials we need to reconstruct the historical demography. Mind it. So a new technique called back projection and family reconstitution was used. That is a new technique that is called back projection and family reconstitution. In absence of comparative evidence, we follow certain uh, techniques that is um, exploring the unknown from the known material. That is called the back projection, uh, which was used for family reconstruction. How family was, but how was a family in remote past? If you do not know exactly what was the constitution of a family, then we can go backward from known to unknown. That is called back projection. So Ronald Lee's theory of inverse projection starts from an early date, from an end date, when an accurate census provides information about the size of population and its distribution. Is there certain theory about to put forward by the scholar Ronald Lee, which may go a long way to help us to reach our goal. So family reconstitution is another method that exploits the nominative character of a parish register. And as we have just discussed the family reconstitution on the basis of the available evidences or materials, we can constitute a family. How, what was a family uh, looked like? That was another way. So this method involves the linkage of baptism and burial records in a single parish in order to reconstitute the life histories of all families. Method of burial varies from time to time. If you study the burial burials, and we can get certain changes in burial of dead bodies, and from that we can glean some information about the family, or that can help us to reconstitute the family of, that existed at the time. In recent times, historical demography has become more sophisticated with the use of computers. Now computers have come to the rescue, or have come to the help of mankind to do uh, certain wonderful jobs that without which man would not have been able to reconstitute the family in the past. And for example, I would like to give you example that you must have seen in computers that as the face of a small child, whether a boy or a girl, that can be known through computers, as computers project what the particular boy or girl would look like after 50 years. You must have seen that a face appears, a tender face appears, then grows, then comes to the youthful. When it is a youth, time of youthful, it looks beautiful or handsome. Then it is slowly declines and goes to the dotage, means old age. So by using the techniques of or technology of computers, we can project what a child would look like after 50 years or 60 years or in its old age. Like that, computer have helped us, or computers now helping us in recent times to in historical demography, and the method has or the system has become more sophisticated due to the advent of computers in this field. Computers have made it possible to process a huge amount of data. Certainly, computers are computers can compute so many data at a time, and that do not need explanation, as you know that how powerful computers have been made right now. The medieval demography in recent times reflects a shift in emphasis in research. Medieval demography uh, has has a shifted emphasis in research. That is, the increasing interest in the social institution of family, the functioning of the domestic unit of production and reproduction has taken precedence over the study of population estimates of a particular time or region. So more emphasis is being given to social institution of a family, the functioning of the domestic unit of production and reproduction instead of the study of population estimates. This is a paradigm shift in that is being seen nowadays. So world population, if you see that how population changes from time to time, the world population in 600 AD at the beginning of Christian era was about to 170 or to 185 million. By the beginning of 7th century AD, it increased to 195 to 220 million. These are the statistics taken about the increase of population from time to time. So the three main areas of population concentration in Europe and Asia in the first 6 centuries AD were the Mediterranean basin, India, and China. So three places where population concentration was more are India, China, and Mediterranean basin. These are the three places where population was highest. So population estimates and distribution in medieval period. What about this? Due to want of data, it is very difficult to work out population figures for different parts of the world during the medieval. We are hamstrung, that means handicapped. We are undone to find out data regarding the population figures, determining population figures due to unavailability of data or due to insufficient data. A lot of work has been done on the demography of Europe. As regards to Europe, we have a lot of works done on demography. As so far as Asia is concerned, the Chinese were far more advanced in technology than medieval Europe. China was developed, far more developed in technology as compared to the development in Europe. The art of printing, use of a navigational compass, the gunpowder gave it an edge over Europe during the period. During the medieval period, China surpassed European countries in technology insofar as China invented gunpowder, China invented compass, and the printing press, printing also. So, for all these advantages, China had an edge over the Europeans during the medieval period. In 600 AD, population was set 50 to 60 billion, and it rose to 100 to 120 million in 1500 AD. That is where the population was constant or is constantly increasing. And the most populated country right now is headed by China, followed by India. Anyway, in India, population rose from 50 to 55 million in six and rose to 110 million in 1580. That means India and China are most populated countries even during the medieval period. The Ganga Valley was the main democratic concentration. Ganga Valley means that is Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and the adjoining areas where the places where population concentration was highest. The Europe in Europe, the population estimates of Europe are available in a much organized number. However, we find the population estimates in a better way from European countries. The demographic growth during 150 to 1250 AD was also a result of expansion in cultivation. Population growth was triggered due to expansion in cultivation, increase in productivity, spread of technology, and growth of time. So these are the catalysts to increase or responsible for the increase of uh, demographic growth during 150 to 1250 AD. And there were also decline factors responsible for the decline of people or population, that is the decline in wars and conflicts. Due to wars people die, so that led to decline in the number of population and a low frequency. Sorry, just this is just opposite, decline in wars and conflicts. There were less number of wars and conflicts, low frequency of famines. That means famines occurred rarely, and low frequency in infanticide. Infanticide means killing the baby, newborn baby, that is called infanticide, an evil that was prevalent in in Europe also, and contraception or abortion. Contraceptive people used to avoid children, and also abortion is having the same effect, uh, seem to have a decline. So these are the factors uh, for growth of population. These are the factors which were responsible for the growth. That means a decline in what, low frequency of famine, low infanticide rate, contraception or abortion as a few, and all these factors together led to the growth of the population. Then there was nursing revolution and Black Death. Black Death means it took place in Europe, and it is a type of plague. And because of the Black Death, almost one third population of Europe perished in that Black Death. So there was, however, no uniformity, as some areas maintained their population level when others were falling. We cannot say definitely, or we cannot ascertain that there was a uniformly the number of people were distributed in different areas, while some areas, some regions showed a decline, other regions showed a growth in the number of people. Changes in demographic. So demographic changes have been attributed to the development in modes of production. Since modes of production increased or developed, we find a corresponding development in the demographic change. Population densities were highest where agricultural technology, urban development, and spread of trade formed the salient features of the economy. Where technology was applied in agriculture or where there was urban development and spread of trade and commerce, we find a population growth in those areas. Migration and urbanization were two other important factors for demographic change. Migration and urbanization. Migration means people from rural areas or any other areas, they migrate or come to another town or another region in search of livelihood. That is mainly livelihood. One thing, and then urbanization. Urbanization means exodus of people from countryside or rural areas to township areas or to the town areas that would lead to urbanization. So migration and urbanization were two factors of a demographic change. For example, to give one example that people of Bihar and UP, they migrate to Assam. There are uh, number of the North Indians increased in Assam. So we can say that there a demographic change took place. So demographic change means there is a change in the number of different people. That means when we find certain changes in people, then we can say that a demographic change took place. Marriage pattern, fertility, birth and death trends, family and household structure, diseases, famines, and natural calamities, etc., are also responsible for demographic change. Marriage pattern, that is also responsible. Fertility means if in a particular area the birth rate is very low or very high, then it can have an impact on demographic change. Then birth and death trends, if infant mortality is high or people who die young, then also it will have a serious impact on demographic change, family household structure, and diseases. Diseases are also responsible. And glaring example is that when Corona came, lakhs of people perished in a year or two. So that had a strong bearing on the demographic change of different countries across the globe. Famines and natural calamities. Natural calamities are also responsible if tsunami comes, like your super cyclone of 1999, or where the big floods come, like in Uttarakhand, and where the other natural calamities like your earthquake, etc., etc. So that will have a bearing on the demographic change certainly because it takes a heavy toll in terms of human being. Migration and urbanization. German tribes, Arab tribes under the banner of Islam moved into North Africa. Mongols, Ottoman Turks, etc. Migration and urbanization. After the spread of Islam, many after the advent of Islam, the Muslims migrated to different places, conquered different land, and settled there, which led to a demographic change in those countries. And similarly, Mongols migrated from Mongolia to different parts of Central Asia, etc. European states 100 Years' War that took place between England and France between from 1337 to 1453. That means the war continued for 100 years. So the loss in terms of human lives can be easily imagined if the war continues for 100 years. And crusades launched mainly from France and Germany between 196 and 1270. Crusades means there was a long war between the Christians and the Muslims for occupying Jerusalem in Israel. So the war took place for several centuries. That is for 3 to 400 centuries. The Crusades continued between, and it was a fierce war between the Christians and the Muslims. And you can imagine how many people, uh, including men, women, and children, might have perished because of the Crusade wars that lasted for almost 300 between Christians and Muslims. So these things played a crucial role, a determining role for the change pattern in mm, demographic or in historical demographic. Urbanization was yet another factor which contributed to changes in population distribution and its redistribution. That is very common. Urbanization, you know that people um, come in groups, means in large numbers to towns and metropolis in search of work or livelihood, and that is why or to work in different factories and companies, and that is why urbanization takes place. Once a person serves in a town or a city, he never goes back to his original place or villages, and therefore this is the way the urbanization takes place. Mm, both in took place both in medieval and even in modern times also it is going on even today. The rise in urban population was more as a result of immigration to cities from rural areas, economic changes and growth. The fall in population could also be a result of population outstripping resources. When the fall in population took place, this could be a result of population outstripping resources. That means the population was more than the resources. The population losses in 14th century were a Malthusian checks, a rising death rate that tended to re-establish an equilibrium between population and production. When there is a fall of population, in that case, the population outstrips resources. That means less population, more resources, and famines, diseases, and epidemics. The crowded urban centers on hygienic living and poor medical facility caused spread of epidemics. We know that what are the reasons that are responsible for the spread of epidemics. Then typhus, TB, malaria, smallpox, influenza, etc. These are fatal diseases found easy prey in the towns and the countrysides. Medical science was not that much improved to cure the patients suffering from all these diseases, and to add to their misery, bubonic plague, dark blue and black patches appeared on limbs and other body parts, hence the name Black Death. Black Death means people died of plague, bubonic plague. Then why it is called Black Death? Because dark blue and black patches appeared on limbs and other body parts. If a person is affected by mm, bubonic plague, then dark patches will appear on his body, black patches, and and the man will die. So from black patches, the epidemic was named as or the it was called Black Death, but origin was bubonic plague. From Mongolia, perhaps it started from Mongolia and ravaged Central Asia and Europe. It had its origin probably in Mongolia, and it spread to Central Asia and then to Europe. Life expectancy was 22 to 35 and even higher. The birth rate and nuptiality too suffered from an absence of data. We do not have data for this period, so we cannot have accurate estimate or calculation about birth rate and also nuptiality. Nuptiality means the number of marriages took place during that period. After the epidemic, birth rate increased, so also marriages. Epidemic means after bubonic plague, marriage rate increased and also birth rate also increased. The hearth, household, family and household statistics are the only source available for understanding family structure for the Middle Ages. Statistics, that means household statistics are the only source to know about the family, to understand the family structure. The high death rate as a result of subsistence causes and the plague may have modified the domestic structures in different ways. High death rate as a result of subsistent causes and the plague may have modified the domestic structures in different ways. That means we know that there were high death rate because of bubonic plague and spread of diseases, etc., etc. The flights also into town and abandoning of land may have certainly broken family bonds and resulted in reconstituting family structure. When people leave their rural areas in villages uh, and come to town, then there was certainly a broken family bond that led to broken family bond, and ultimately it resulted in reconstituting family structures. And during this period was marked the number of vestigial household, remarriage of widows. And then this led to high birth rate, affected demographic variables. So because of this is This happens after the epidemic. There were family disturbances, and there was a need to reconstitute or restructure families. And vestigial household means people left their houses and came to towns, and there their household lay vacant, and remarriage of widows were allowed to remarry, and that led to high birth rate, affected demographic variables. So all these factors that were contributing to the demographic variables. So after the epidemic, urban center question of definition. Research works have provided a lot of insight in understanding the process of urbanism in England, France, and other countries. Research works. A town is bigger than a village in area. Majority of people are engaged in professions other than agriculture. Needless to say that in towns, the population are number of people are more than that of a village. And here in towns, the people are not engaged in agriculture but in some other work. And modern cities were different than medieval cities. Uh, if we compare what was the nature of modern cities in medieval period and in modern period, we find a vast hiatus between the two. And market is an integral part of a town. Market is an definitely, if it is a market, then if it is a town, then there must be markets. So towns through the history. Greek and Roman cities emerged from the early times. Biggest cities of Roman Empire were Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch. Then during the Harappan culture, then there were Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and Lothal, Kalimantan, and so many cities were there from 600 BC to 580. We have in North India Rajagriha, Sravasti, Kosala, Kausambi, Ujjaini, Varanasi, etc. And and during this period, there were uh, the for the safety of towns, there were moats and ramparts around the towns. So literary sources explain the rise of early urbanization in two ways. Literary sources give us information as to how urbanization took place, and it gives two ways. One was uh, hierarchy of settlements was a symbol of urbanization. Hierarchy of settlements means there was a different stages of uh, settlements, and the grammar or village was the unit of settlement. Places were known Nigam and as Pataligramo and Sringapur were the centers of exchange. In later Gupta period, there was a decay in urban centers in ancient India because of the emergence of feudal features. Urban centers declined because of the emergence of feudal features uh, after Gupta period. So Hunno invasion of the Roman Empire would have disturbed the commercial circuit. All these developments were responsible for the urban decline in north of ancient India. So, different factors, as we discussed, that in Roman Empire it declined to place because of Puno invasion, and in India it was caused because of the decline, because of the revival of feudal structure in society. Towns of Arabs and Islamic world. Prophet Muhammad lived and propagated his message in the urban centers of Makkah. Prophet Muhammad belonged to Makkah after attaining the supreme knowledge. He was forced to flee to Medina. In Medina, he consolidated his position, reached his newfound faith, came to Makkah and conquered it, and propagated his message in the urban center of towns, and trade routes were interconnected. Towns and trade routes, so because of trade and commerce, it was necessary to interconnect town and trade routes for the sake of trade and commerce. Urbanization in medieval period. During medieval period, there was a revival of urbanism. On Western Europe, growth of trade and markets prepared the ground for the growth of such forces which weakened and supplanted feudalism. That means growth of trade and commerce became a major factor that contributed to the decline of feudalism. Again, the Crusades created favorable conditions for the emergence of commerce and trade in the Mediterranean Sea. When Crusades took place, people from two communities, people from different countries met together. They came in contact with one another, and they belong to different countries and also different areas, and and certainly there it was a boost, provided a boost or flip to trade and commerce, and growth of town in Europe was remarkable. In Europe, growth of town there occurred or there took place the increase in towns or growth of towns. In India, cities like Lahore, Agra, Delhi are estimated to have more than 500,000 inhabitants, which is more than any contemporary European city. That means the Indian cities had a population which was far more than the population of any European city. Understanding medieval towns. Capitalism and towns were basically the same. Capitalism and towns were basically the same. They had some kind of autonomy. Autonomy means they had some independence as regards to the management of their own affairs. In Asia, cities were under the control of Caliph, and Caliph means the religious head of the Islamic of the Muslims, or you can say the Islamic world. Towns, roads, ships, caravans, and pilgrimages were all the part of a single whole. Towns, roads, ships, caravans. Caravans means the merchants used to go for trade and commerce in group. That is called caravan. Physical layout. Medieval towns in all parts of Europe and Asia were enclosed by walls with ramparts. That means towns were protected by constructing walls and ramparts around it. And important part of the town was built in a planned manner. Planning was also uh, resorted to for important towns and cities. In India, there were separate markets for specific commodities, and we have a glaring example that during the reign of Alauddin Khilji, separate markets were set up for different goods. We have we know it from the market control and price control and market regulation of Alauddin Khilji. Another significant feature of these towns was the presence of sarais. Sarais means resting and living places. That you can say these are the works of benevolent rulers who had constructed houses where people or traders used to take rest. For travelers and businessmen, relations of towns with the countryside. The town and countryside had a reciprocal relations. Reciprocal relations. Reciprocal means if we wish them, they will give us, they will respond us. That is called a reciprocal. Two-way traffic. So one supplementing and complementing the other and following the rules of coexistence. That means they followed a policy of coexistence and there were cooperation between towns and villages. Rules of coexistence, food supply to countryside. For food, the towns depended on countryside or rural areas, and for manufactured goods, the rural areas depended on towns. Guilds of merchants had a complete control over the administration and trade of the town. Guilds means association of merchants or traders who controlled the activities of artisans. They fixed the quality and the prices of the goods and they tightened the administration. They controlled the administration. Technology of warfare. Man fought with one another. From the dawn of civilization, man has been engaging in different wars, and needless to say that the technology used in warfare witnessed changes from time to time. And in a medieval period, cavalry was the dominant arm of medieval European army. Cavalry means horsemen, people ho- fighting from the horse. That was called cavalry. Crossbow was used to before 100 years. Crossbow means one type of bow. Long bow means it's a bigger than crossbow. And plate armor, infantry, firearms, gunpowder, and fortifications. Cannons. These are the new technology introduced in war. Fall of Constantinople in 1453 was due to the bombardment from the cannons. In fact, the first sign of shift to infantry came during the Hundred Years' Wars. When Hundred Years' Wars took place, the knights became useless because of the fact that knights used to wear an iron plate. So when the firearm was introduced, cannons were introduced, the knights also could protect themselves, but they could not protect the horses. So when horses were injured, they were bound to dismount from the horse. And with a heavy armor on their body, it became almost an impossible task for them to fight on the battlefield. So the invention or the use of firearms and cannons revolutionized the method of warfare during this period, and war strategy changed from time to time. Pikemen, pikemen, one type of weapon that comprised of a long wood with a sharp iron tip that is called a pike. So pikemen service series of long lines, etc., fast rank firing together and then retiring to reload. That was a change of strategy in warfare. Uh, Strategy changed from continued to change from time to time. As people or nations used strategy to determine or to increase the winnability possibility. That is, if the war strategy was changed, the attack would be more effective defeating the army. Therefore, they changed this strategy from time to time, and this came to be known as certain techniques were followed, like arranging the army in two lines, that because in those period took a few minutes to reload the gun, so there were two lines. When first line fired, then came back, and the second line came forward, which had already loaded the uh, bullet. So in this way, there was a change in the strategy for making the attack more effective on the enemy. Spread out during volley technique, spread out during battle to maximize attack and to minimize target for incoming fire. Volley strategy means that is a technique in which the soldiers used to spread out to uh, covering a greater area so that they could attack effectively, and the counter attack would not destroy them, um, because they are spread out to and in single set. So reaction of the traditional warrior class. You know that during throughout the medieval period, the knights commanded respect and um, praise from the people because uh, uh, because they were invincible and could defeat uh, uh, any miscreant or a troublesome man. Uh, and they were known for their chivalrous qualities and for their amazing courage and their fighting skill. But those knights became useless after the use of firearms and cannons. That means there was no need to fight in a face to face. That means physical fight was not required, and one can fight from remaining at a distance only to use the cannon and the firearms. The musketeers emerged as one of the effective instrument in army. So the need of knights were no more felt because they were rendered because their fighting skill was of no avail in face of the artillery and the firearms because that could be fired from a distance. The new military technology made the skill of arms of knights uh, their strength and their honorable fight look worthless. As we discussed, that they were no longer required because they could not face the uh, they could not face the firearms and the cannons which were fired from a distance and uh, never miss the target. Gunpowder at the sea. Sea fighting in the late medieval period was mainly a matter of boarding and entering the sea. Before the advent of gunpowder and firearms, cannons, etc., uh, people used to fight in the sea, but their fight was limited to capturing the sea, not to destroying. Only to capture sea, they would they would jump. They would take their ship to closer to another ship, and they would jump to the other ship, and they would fight. Their main aim was to capture the ship, not to destroy. So uh, the attackers by middle of the 15th century, almost all European fighting ships carried cannons. Now the bowmen were replaced and cannons were placed in ships, and it became a new weapon in fighting in sea. Artillery revolutionized sea fighting. Transportation of heavy guns was a problem. Ships cannons were heavy guns, and because of their weight, it was inconvenient to be carried or to be transported on land, but it could be easily transported on ship. Changes in the military logistics. Logistics means that provisions are needed, feeding, equipping, transporting, and housing. These are called the science of logistics, which were indispensable during the war. Forts and naval stations were built for to provide logistics. Forts were built, naval stations were built where people could take rest, where they could reinforce their supplies, etc. And Finland there were voluntary and mercenary soldiers. Soldiers were both voluntary and mercenary. Voluntary means those who joined on their own will. Mercenary means soldiers were bought or roped in lieu of money. So Finland and Sweden were the first states who attempted to introduce some sort of compulsory military training. Compulsory military service is otherwise known as a conscription. Conscription means if the state compels each family or compels the people to join the army, then it is called conscription. And Sweden and Finland were the first to resort to this method or to this conscription. And, transport and navigation roads were maintained for better transportation. Major hindrance was a high cost for transportation. A lot of money was required. So monarchs took interest uh, in this. King Louis XI of France renovated main highways in 1555. Queen Mary appointed inspectors of roads. They cut rights of Hungarian village works, devised a practical passenger boat. That means steps were taken and the state took the responsibility of constructing and renovating the roads and canals for transportation and navigation also. That is, water transport was much cheaper. Ships were built. Riverine transport was popular. That means rivers were used for transportation, and canals were also constructed. So in this way, the states also took interest to increase transportation and navigation by taking the responsibility of increasing the facility. Kinship and family structure. Black Death, regarding which I have already told you, disrupted the social stability. Definitely, many people died, many young men died, many people died, uh, and that certainly disturbed the social stability. Family offered some solace, tranquility, and balance. The demographic crisis caused by high mortality strengthened the extended family. Demographic crisis came because of the death of male population, and that helped to strengthen the extended family. The lineage was at its best when engaged in collective maintenance. Marriage tradition varied from region to region. Marriage tradition means marriages were solemnized, but the tradition varied from uh, place to place. The Roman Church defined the notion of familial exogamy. The chief aim of Gregorian reforms was to establish marriage as a true order, inferior to the spiritual order of the church, but equally of divine origin. So these are the changing prospects of marriage in Roman society. Marriage was a free choice. That means the candidates were free to choose their partner. Of course, parents enjoined the authority to plan and impose marriages. Sometimes the parents had the authority, means they had the power to decide a marriage. And misalliances were forbidden by the church. Church had its role also, and if the marriage was misalliance, that means if the marriage was unsuitable, then it was prohibited by the church. So clandestine marriages and engagements forced children by their parents became a major source of litigation. Litigation means normally clandestine marriages were not recognized, and marriages thrust on children also uh, was not also did not receive the approbation uh, approbation from the church, and these two became a major source of litigation. Provision of institutionalized celibacy of a priest. Priests were not to marry; they remained to be celibate, or they had to maintain celibacy, or ban on clerical marriage. That means those who used to be priests or fathers, you can say, they were not to marry. However, they tended to evade it by keeping concubines. They did not marry, but could not maintain celibacy because uh, they kept concubines. Concubines means to live with a man, but the woman would not receive the status of a wife. Then she is termed as a concubine. If Odia students are there in the class, then concubine means the country kept by Rakita. Anyway, so since the Brits were not allowed mm, to marry and they managed to satisfy their carnal desire to concubines, and this explains the nepotistic tendencies in the church. That means since they didn't marry, they had no children, they used to bring their niece uh, to succeed them. Sexual relationships were not confined to monogamous marriages. Monogamy means to have only one uh, wife. Concubines, but it was not confined to monogamous. It was not confined to monogamy, confined to one female. Concubines, prostitutes, slave girls, servant mistresses provided significant emotional and sexual abuse. There were many mm, avenues by which the mm, priests or the people used to release their emotion, used to have their catharsis, and those mediums were concubines, prostitutes, slave girls, servant mistresses. They provided significant emotional and sexual outputs. Through them, they could find an outlet for their emotional, for releasing their emotion. Polygamy was prevalent, and because of polygamy, their illicit uh, marriages, there were the children uh, produced in this way came to be known as bastards, and they have no claim on the property or on the family inheritance. These sinful women, these sinful women means women engaged in sex with other men, considered the enemy of home. Means they were considered enemy of home, means the family life of a householder may be uh, shattered because of these sinful women who were prostitutes or slave girls or any other women. But in fact, they were considered to be indispensable. That means they were a sign qua non for the society. their service was a must for the society. Society barely needed their service, even if they were considered sinful for the household, for the home. It was they who guarded the honor of married women against the turbulence lust of young men, and above all, saved young men against the danger of sodomy. The prostitutes and slave girl rendered a great service to society by providing outlet to the young men to the lust of the young men, uh, and they saved the honor of the wives because otherwise the young men would have indulged in uh, i- uh, unlawful relationships, or they would have committed rapes and other sort of adultery, and even young men were also saved from being a victim of a sodomy. Sodomy means homosex between male and male. That's called the sodomy. So the so-called prostitutes, in this way, they rendered a great human service to society. There was some sort of universal obsession, and for Italy and Spain had the people of Italy and Spain had a special obsession for this unnatural sex, that is sodomy, and premarital sexual union was prevalent. Premarital means before marriage, the people indulged in sex, and the law acknowledged for adultery, there were laws to kill the adulterous wife and her lover if caught in love making. There were laws to kill a wife and her lover or paramour if they were caught red-handed in love making. Infanticide, then sometimes because of the illicit love making, women used to get pregnant, and the uh, unwanted child they used to kill, and this thus infanticide appeared, and sometimes husbands were poisoned, and people came to believe in sorcery and magic, etc. So, purpose of marriage, in popular perceptions or according to church, was to have children. People should marry only to have children. Um, um, but they knew the use of contraceptives and practice. Different practices were used to avoid children. Uh, Prostitutes and girls in love also commonly used contraceptive drugs, they followed certain methods like mustard seed. Certain postures were resorted to avoid children, and then there was a high infant mortality. Certainly, the illicit, the child produced because of the illicit relationship were put to death, and that resulted in high infant mortality. So, uh, in society, European society, male children were everywhere outnumbered females. And, there were breastfeeding, and some wealthy people used to keep the nurses to feed the babies. The pregnant lady had to obey many taboos. She was conveyed with sacred, she was covered with sacred amulets. Amulets means talisman, dauria, and her cravings had to be taken care of. When a lady used to get pregnant, she had to obey certain taboos. Taboos means not to be done by a pregnant woman. And she was covered with sacred amulets. Amulets, talisman বা ডংরিয়া বিভিন্ন প্রকার ডংরিয়া পিন্ধিଥିଲା and her cravings means her wishes were taken care of. If she wanted to eat hilsa fish, then hilsa fish was to be given to her. If she wanted to eat sweet cake, then she was to be given that stuff also. That means her every wish was to be satisfied, was to be fulfilled. If a wife gets pregnant, and family system, a family and system of inheritance. Inheritance means getting the paternal property after the death of parents. So there were the lateral and lineal and even agnatic. Agnatic means descendants from the same male line. Then uterine means born of the same mother. Normally there was the primogeniture, the ultimogeniture, then unigeniture. But in society there was normally equal share of children. Primogeniture means inheritance was to be received by the eldest child. That is the primogeniture. Ultimogeniture means the property would pass on to the last child. That is the ultimogenitor. And unigenitor means the property would be obtained by the only child, one child, that is a unigeniture. But normally the property was divided equally among the children. Control of the family by religious authorities and the state. Religious authority means the church and state interfered in family life as regards to the uh, property inheritance. According to there occurred the Protestants also. According to Martin Luther, Calvin, and other Protestants, the Roman Church had created a contradiction of making marriage an indissoluble sacrament. Marriage indissoluble means marriage could not be dissolved as stipulated by Roman Church, while exalting the ideal of virginity. And they exalted the ideal of virginity. Virginity means chastity. That is called virginity. They condemned obligatory ecclesiastical celibacy. Obligatory means compulsory, mandatory celibacy. The validity of clandestine marriages. The reformers protested these sorts of practices. Obligatory marriage was to be condemned. They also condemned clandestine marriages, लुच्ची की जो विवाह करा होती, and restrictions on breaking the conjugal bond. That marriage once solemnized could not be dissolved. That is called uh, restrictions on breaking the conjugal bond, even in case of adultery. Even in case of adultery, according to Catholic Church, even if a lady was detected uh, to have performed adultery, the marriage was not to be dissolved because marriage, according to Catholic Church, was a sacrament. But for Protestants, marriage was a divine institution but not a sacrament. It may be a divine institution, but it was not to be a sacrament. It was a contract based on mutual consent. They termed the marriage as a contract based on mutual consent. Both the parties are willing to live together. So this is a mutual consent, not a sacrament. They allowed divorce in principle in cases of acknowledged adultery or prolonged dejection of the conjugal home. They allowed divorce in case of adultery. If they indulged in adultery, then there can be a divorce, or divorce could be sought. And even if there was a dejection, then divorce could be sought. And certain changes were brought about to in in, in marriage and the family life. Certain laws were uh, passed, certain legislatures were passed, and the states interfered in, in controlling the marriage life and property incomes. And I think only one page is left of this book, and I think you will go through that one page on your own. Time is approaching, and it is too late. Perhaps you must be suffering from pangs of hunger, and I have decided to end up the class right now. So if you have any doubts, then you may ask me questions, or I will end up the class and take your leave. Thank you all. Is there anyone? Yes, nobody is there. Okay, see you all.